Greetings, brothers. Today we're talking Death Company. We're going to find out who gives them the most value if you're going to Forlorn Fury them in terms of buffs. This has definitely been debated a lot in the Discord, so stick around. I hope you enjoy the video. Alright, so who's going to do the most buffing of the Death Company? So we're going to look at 5 key choices here. We've got our Chapter Master, we've got basically our Sanguinary Librarian casting Unleashed Rage, we've got Astorath casting Massive Doom, we've got Sanguinary Ancient with the +1 banner, and then we get the Sanguinary Priest. These are the 5 main characters I would assume that you would use to buff the Death Company. If there's any I missed, and I don't think there is, but please leave me a comment below and we can cover that in a future video. So let's start with just the 5 Death Company. They're getting 20 attacks without Assault Doctrine. They're Strength 8, they're -2, they're 3 damage. I think we all know that. And they're -1 to hit, so they're hitting on 50% of the time. We're going to fight something that's tough to kill. I was 50-50 between a Telemon and a Leviathan, but I ended up going for the Leviathan because it has Armor of Contempt, meaning it's 2-up save. It's actually really good against these Thunder Hammers. The -2 from the Hammers essentially is going to become -1. They're also going to be -1 damage, so your Thunder Hammer is going to be reduced to just -1 AP and 2 damage. So 20 Thunder Hammers into a Leviathan Dreadnought. We don't see too many Leviathans, but these numbers might make you think again about taking one. You're only going to do 5.56 points of damage, so it's still going to be in top bracket. It's got 14 wounds. Let's bring Dante into the equation. So obviously Dante is going to give you full rerolls if you give that ability. It's the Chapter Master ability, you give it to the Death Company. Now, this is basically going to increase the Death Company's damage by 50%. They're going to do 8.33, which I guess is going to bracket it. His buff has a 100% reliability and it's a 6-inch range. I guess if you did take a generic Chapter Master, that would be the same. But if you took Heroic Bearing, you can get the 9-inch bubble on that buff. So the second choice would be Mephiston or a generic Librarian. 6s are going to burst if you successfully cast Unleash Rage, and that is going to give you now 7.4 damage, so you're going to get a 33% increase from Unleash Rage. The reliability of that is essentially 72% if you just cast it, and it could be 93% if you use a reroll and you're out of an eye range. Remember as well, you can be 12 inches away for doing this. You could also, I guess, take Psychic Mastery and make your casting even more reliable with your +1 from the Warlord trait. Now, we could also take Astorath, who has essentially able to give them Massive Doom, which gives them 3s to hit. I know that Massive Doom can give them invulnerable save, but for this video we're just looking at damage. The way I really see Death Company is they jump in, 5-man squad, 5 hammers, they either kill or they get killed. They don't really survive whether or not you play stratagems on them. Maybe Massive Doom helps them a little bit if you do roll at 6, but let's just talk about damage. They also go on 7.4 damage, so that's also a 33% increase. The buff reliability is 66%, or it would be 100% if you're using Commanding Oratory for 2 CP, and the buff range is not 12 inches, it would be 6. And just like that, it is 6 inches. Right, moving on, we also have our Sanguinary Ancient. He's basically going to do exactly the same as Astorath. He's going to give the +1 to hit. He's going to put them up to 7.4, and again, his buff range is 6 inches. So if we look then finally at the Sanguinary Priest, and what the Sanguinary Priest is going to do, he's going to give them 1 additional attack and 1 additional AP because they're going to be in Assault Doctrine. That's going to help a heat. That's going to help the most out of all the options. That's going to put them up to 10.42 damage, and it's basically an 87% increase, is 100% reliability, and its buff range is 6 inches. So I guess the question, or a good thing to say, and this might not be as easy to do as it used to be, if you are not going to run a Sanguinary Priest, but you are going to run a Death Company to Forlorn Fury them, then the 2 CP you would spend on Adaptive Strategy to get them into Assault Doctrine earlier has huge value. It's a real shame that Blood Angels don't have any other strat that can get you into the Assault Doctrine, like the Space Wolves have one that you can just put any unit in for 1 CP. Maybe in the future Blood Angels will get that, but Assault Doctrine is going to be huge increase in damage. Definitely worth doing, and yeah, if we compare them, you know, I've compared them all. So Chapter Master is second, I guess. The other 3 all keeping up on 33%, and the Sanguinary Priest being 100% the best choice. Also put the reliability of the buffs here, so you can just see, you know, 3 of them are 100% reliable, and then Astorath and Mephiston, which are the 2 hotly debated people. People seem to think Astorath is a better choice for the Death Company. I think if you're running 10, he 100% is, because you don't fail your leadership tests ever with Astorath. But I think if you're just running 5, statistically, And I mean, I don't really like spending 2 CP on a litany. Statistically, Mephiston is going to actually be a little bit more reliable, and he has a little bit more range, or a Librarian. So assuming you have to include a priest, are you going to spend that 2 CP in turn 1 or 2, which would get pretty expensive if you Forlorn Fury. So how can we combo some of the above to get maximum damage? Because that's what this video is all about. Remembering that ideally we don't want to ever have more than 3 characters. If we have 3 characters in a list, then we open ourselves up to assassination, and I try and build my lists to be difficult for enemies to score against. I'm pretty much resolved to you can never have more than 3 characters in your list. If you don't have to agree with me, you can have 4 if you want, but if I see you with 4 characters, I'm probably picking Assassinate. Anything that can get like 10 points now is a good secondary, so killing 3 of your 4 characters and getting 10 points, that's pretty decent. So let's talk about, we take Dante and we add in the Sanguinary Priest. So we're keeping the Sanguinary Priest, we're going to add in Dante, we're actually going to now go up to 15.63 damage. So just Dante and the Sanguinary Priest, that's enough to kill the Leviathan now. That's actually an increase of 280% on his base damage, because these numbers, they're like compound, you essentially, you don't add them together, you multiply them together. So any Chapter Master and a Priest is a great choice for the Death Company. That's making them super deadly. Next up, Mephiston. So we're keeping the Sanguinary Priest, we're adding in the Bursting Sixes, and we're not far behind. We're on 13.84. Again, that's 250% increase from our base damage. Now, obviously, if you were in a target that wasn't -1 damage, then you would have more damage, but all these numbers are taken from the base, so I would think even if you were attacking something that wasn't -1 damage, the relative increase here would be the same, I believe. I haven't done all the math, and this math did get quite confusing at some times. Alright, Astorath. He's going to hit on 3s. He's also going to do the exact same damage as Mephiston, 13.89. Yeah, just had to double check that. And that's the 250%. So we also know that our Sanguinary Ancient is going to basically bring in the same. So if we come to another conclusion slide, if you're just going to take 2 characters to buff the Death Company, the Sanguinary Priest and a Chapter Master are 100% your best choice. But the other 3 options are pretty decent. We're going to talk about Quake Bolts as well later, because you could run some sort of random character that had Quake Bolts to get another +1 to hit. We'll touch on that at the very end. So if we were going to include the Sanguinary Priest and the Chapter Master, who would be the 3rd character that we could add out of these 3, I guess, to get the most value? And let's start by looking at Mephiston. So Mephiston would put us up to 20.83 damage. His damage would stay at 33%. Now, I actually thought it would be more than 33%, because if you think about it, you're hitting on 4s, so you roll all those dice and every 6 is bursting, but then all the misses you're re-rolling. So potentially you get to roll some of the dice twice while fishing for 6s. So for whatever reason, this math, I did it a bunch of times, it seems right, it seems like it's another 33%, and it seems like that means the total damage is 375% from the base value of 5.56. Now, Astorath is giving you +1 to hit, but this seems to fall off because essentially Chapter Master rerolls, they're not being so valuable. Like before, you were hitting on 4s, you were rerolling everything. Now you're hitting on 3s, you're just rerolling 1s and 2s. And statistically, I guess you're kind of capped on the number of hits you can get. Unleash Rage, because it's bursting 6s, you're bursting additional attacks. Here you're capped. So the numbers come in at the +1 to hit when you already have Chapter Master rerolls is actually kind of like diminishing returns here. So you get 333% total damage, still 18.52, so you're still one-shotting a Leviathan with these guys. Obviously the Sanguinary Ancient's numbers are pretty much the same, because he just does exactly the same as Massive Doom. I guess the advantage there is he's 100% reliable, whereas Massive Doom you have to roll a 3+. So if you look at Sanguinary Priest, Chapter Master and Librarian running Unleash Rage, this is statistically the most damage that you can get out of a unit like Death Company in turn 1. And obviously the Chapter Master and Unleash Rage are also brilliant on the Sanguinary Guard as you push through the battlefield, or push through the battle, sorry, and as you go into turn 2, the Sanguinary Priest can get value again because he can continue to do Assault Doctrine, and if you can Assault Doctrine under their units as well, if you the additional damage it shows that the Death Company get, other units are going to get great additional damage as well. So we talk a lot about running Death Company with 4 hammers. And if you look at here, the 4-hammer squad now is just 165 points. So if you took 80% of this value for the combo of the Chapter Master, the Sanguinary Priest, and the Librarian, you're still looking at 16.64 damage. So that's your Leviathan dead in turn 1. And if you're just running Thor hammers on the other option, you're also one-shotting Leviathan. You're still doing 14.8 damage. We've still got one guy with a chainsword with 6 attacks left over, so in the very unlikely scenario that the odds go against you here and you leave the Leviathan on 1 or 2 wounds or something, maybe your guy with the chainsword can finish it off. I personally think 4 is a very good number of hammers, and I think any of these 3 combos is actually really strong. I've run the Chapter Master, the Sanguinary Ancient, and the Priest recently, and I've also more recently been running the Priest, the Chapter Master, and the Librarian. And just a few patches ago, this was like 12% more expensive because Death Company have come down 2 points per model for 2 patches in a row. So this used to be 185 points. It's now 165. I think at 165, you 100% want that Death Company in your army. If you want to go 5 hammers, knock yourself out. I just think that you optimally can probably do the work that you need to do with 4. I certainly have been doing. And remember, this 20 points of damage into a toughness 7 enemy with -1 damage and basically a 2-up save and Armor of Contempt. So like, you can't really get worse than this, because Thunderhammers are -3, Armor of Contempt makes them -2, so your Leviathan Dreadnought's actually saving on 4s here, and he's only taking 2 damage from a Thunderhammer. So, yeah, I mean, 16.4 damage in that scenario is actually, like, I think that's generally really, really good. My last question is, can we push the damage higher? And of course we can, because we've got some other tricks up our sleeve, and one of the tricks could be Quake Bolts. So we could continue to run our Chapter Master, the Librarian, the Sanguinary Priest, and then we could Quake Bolts or some other way to get +1 to hit, and that would push our damage up to 23.13. That's an increase of 11%. Again, we're getting onto diminishing returns here with the +1 to hit, but there's a lot of options. Quake Bolts can easily be included in a Blood Angels list. We've seen a lot of people running Eliminators. We've seen some people running Tech Marines. I mean, Quake Bolts can go on any Sergeant that you have, so totally possible to get Quake Bolts in there to sneak out another 11% damage. And then finally, if you did want to take essentially Quake Bolts on top of either Astorath or the Ancient already giving +1, so rather than hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s and 2s, you now hit on 2s, you reroll 1s. Again, diminishing returns here, but that does push the damage up to 20.25, and both these numbers have come a long way from the very first number of 5.56. So pretty much your final conclusion is then you can increase the Death Company's damage by 416% if you also include Quake Bolts, or 364% if you do the alternative with Astorath / the Sanguinary Ancient plus Quake Bolts. That's a lot of damage. That's why I've basically changed my list to always include my 5 Death Company with hammers, and you'll see me painting them if you join any of our live streams over the next couple of weeks. I think the Death Company are a really fun option, and a really scary option if the opponent knows that you have those stacking buffs and you can deploy them far forward in an obscured position. Potentially you're looking at like a 24-inch move straight into the deployment zone, picking off just about anything that you want indiscriminately, and I couldn't recommend more trying a Death Company, a small 5-man. I mean, we see a lot of Blood Angels lists with them, but if you're not running them yet, consider getting them. The thing I would say right now is in the Death Company box you don't get enough Thunderhammers, which is very annoying, but you could buy a Vanguard Veteran box. I think 4 Thunderhammers out of that box, and that makes up your Death Company, and then any leftover chainswords and stuff would let you build an Assault Squad, and Assault Squads seem to be all the rage right now. Maybe we'll cover them in a future video. If there's anything you would like me to cover as well, please leave me a comment down below, or leave me a comment down below on what you think of the Death Company. We have talked a little bit about seeing some other weapon options in the Death Company, so I hope to hear from you guys. I really do appreciate you watching to the end, and if you're still here and you're not a subscriber, then please do consider subscribing. I do put out pretty decent content every week, I think. Anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next videos. Thanks again. By the blood are we made strong, brothers. Peace.